The issue really is twofold. One, that having himself proclaimed to be an Ambedkarite, why did he feel need for this kind of religiosity? Second, the choice of the person. I mean, had he been to some other temple or some other, goddess, or it would have been perhaps less controversial. But the fact that he has been to a person who is, as you rightly said, is extremely divisive. The choice of language Baba Bageshwar has is extremely poor and uncivil. That's what is the issue at heart. The overwhelming response is one of great disappointment, but also of great helplessness. They said that, sir, he could have been threatened. It's very easy to threaten a Dalit and get away. He could have been forced. He could have been intimidated. These are the voices that came from the community. And also that there is a sense of helplessness and hopelessness. But there's also a sense of opportunism, which one should not completely deny that. Because if you remember Mr. Kasi Ram's statement, opportunism is our ideology. People who don't have, one has to realize this, Neelu, that if they don't do this, this has become almost like a survival strategy for them. Somebody like Rahul Gandhi, who might be staking even his personal interest in pitching this kind of struggle against Hindutva. But then for people from outside might look that, we don't have that kind of a social capital to resist. So there is a huge gap between those who are resisting, those who are... so today, as I said, protest and resistance have become a sites of privilege in India. The Gavai incident coming close on heels to Baba Bageshwar's statements and outbursts, and Gavai going and meeting the same Baba Bageshwar, I think is a perfect Hindutva narrative. That institutions will fall in line.
Hello and a warm welcome to HW News Network, your one-stop show, truth be told, for some engaging and thought-provoking conversations. There's a picture which has gone viral, and that picture is of former Chief Justice of India, Justice B.R. Gavai, with Baba Bageshwar, that is Dhirendra Shastri. I want to show you that picture, and since the time this picture came out in the public domain, lawyers, activists, journalists, everyone has been commenting on this picture, because you can see Chief Justice of India with Dhirendra Shastri, who is seen as a divisive figure, as a figure who spews venom at the society. Now, what are the details of this? What we are told is that former Chief Justice of India, B.R. Gavai, visited the Bageshwar Dham, and this picture is of Monday. He visited the Dham on Monday evening, along with his wife Tejashwini Gavai and son Jyotiraditya Gavai. Now, during the visit, he offered prayers at the temple of Balaji and performed rituals with devotion. After the darshan, the Gavai family met Dhirendra Shastri, also known as Bageshwar Sarkar, and on the occasion, Shastri presented him with a sacred picture of Lord Balaji as a gift. Now, since the time this picture has gone viral, people are asking as to what was the need, why Justice B.R. Gavai had to go to a person like Baba Bageshwar. That is question number one. Should he have done it? Now, if you remember those pictures where Prime Minister Narendra Modi had done an aarti with former Chief Justice Chandrachud, and there was lots of criticism as to why should any judge stand for a religious symbol. And this is exactly what everyone is saying when you see this picture of Justice Gavai with Baba Bageshwar. And Justice Gavai in the past has spoken about the fact that the Constitution is upheld when the country is unified, and which is why questions are being asked as to why he wanted to click himself or get himself clicked with Baba Bageshwar. Now, the controversy with Baba Bageshwar doesn't end there. Just yesterday, there were stories on how in Prayagraj, during a Hanuman Katha, Dhirendra Shastri issued a warning to Lenskart. He said that a company named Lenskart had told its employees that they cannot come to work wearing a tilak, mangalsutra or sindoor. And then he further added in a sharp tone that, hey, you, why don't you open your company in Lahore? Why are you operating in India? He also went to the extent of saying that the employees who continue to wear tilak or mangalsutra in Lenskart, then there will be protests outside the Lenskart showrooms. Now, what is this controversy all about, and why did Justice B.R. Gavai choose to go to Baba Bageshwar? That's also another question. We'll try and discuss all of this. Joining me this evening is Professor Ajay Gudavarthy from Jawaharlal Nehru University, a prominent academician and author, and someone who tracks the social and political movements very, very carefully and closely. Thank you so much, Ajay Gudavarthy, for joining. And my first question is related to the picture of Justice B.R. Gavai with Baba Bageshwar. Now, what was the need? People are questioning the intent as to why Justice Gavai felt the need to go to Baba Bageshwar.
Well, Nilu, in the first instance, I think it's very unfortunate. The choice of, this is not about a religious visit. That's not the controversy about, Some people can have first is a retired justice. Second, he can have personal beliefs, in any god or goddess. So that's not the issue here. The issue really is twofold. One, that he having himself proclaimed to be an Ambedkarite. Why did he feel need for this kind of religiosity? Second, the choice of the person. Had he been to some other temple or some other, goddess, or it would have been perhaps less controversial. But the fact that he has been to a person who is, as you rightly said, is extremely divisive. The choice of language Baba Bageshwar has is extremely poor and uncivil. That's what is the issue at heart. That having held the post of CJI, why would somebody in a public life choose to visit? I did some scouting around after yesterday's our conversation, and I found from high place some sources in the judiciary that it was perhaps his better half wife's insistence that they should make this visit. Perhaps she believes in this cult or something of that kind. So it could be a very, very personal thing that Mr. Gavai has done. So that's I think we should keep those sensibilities in mind, that people have personal lives and there are personal compulsions. So it could be that. But what we could discuss more than why did he go is that what is the fallout of such a choice? That, somebody who's held, being from a Dalit background, explicitly calling himself Ambedkarite, having given previous judgments, he opting to go to such a person who is extremely controversial, who is very toxic in his language. That's, I think, is something that's worrying. Two, I think, this coincidence in the timing of both Lenskart and Gavai's visit coming so close to each other also, I think, lends itself to some kind of a spurious, optics of how did this narrativization come? Because knowing the current regime, the way it operates, on the basis of narratives that are usually manufactured, that don't really emerge just from, everyday dynamics, but they're actually thrust and they're manufactured. And so I wouldn't completely dismiss the fact that these optics have been generated, and the optics are very clear, that you have somebody who is going to be anti-Muslim, going to Lahore, controlling the business, and also including Dalits within the fold. So it's also a communication to the Dalits in light of the upcoming elections, that you don't have much of a choice outside the fold of Hindutva. Even your big time social elites, those who are in high places from Dalit community, if they are falling in line, what choice do our ordinary Dalits really have? That could be one of the strong messages against social justice, inclusivity within not the Hindu fold, but the Hindutva fold. That I see it as the possible.
But Professor Ajay, lots of people are attributing motives as to why Justice B.R. Gavai chose to go and visit a person like Baba Bageshwar. Now, Baba Bageshwar is someone who's seen as very closely linked to the power corridors. He is very close to the who's who of the political circles, especially within the BJP. So there are questions asked that is he trying to seek favors from Baba Bageshwar, maybe for some sort of a promotion or for some sort of an appointment now in some new tribunal or some new posting which he wants. People are discussing that on the social media now. How does one discount all that?
Well, I mean, those things are a great possibility. After Gogoi, I think there is no sky is the limit, right? Or the going down beneath the earth is patal is the limit. That's a Janit. The point is this, how much can we really keep speculating on this? I mean, things will become clear if we really accept. Though he went, as you know, he went public saying that he wouldn't take a post-retirement post, but there's nothing that can really stop him from changing his mind. But he might accept something, and this could be scurrying a favor. This could be some kind of a give and take, quid pro quo that might be happening. I mean, those are very speculative. I don't think there's much point in us sitting and discussing what could be the reason. I mean, as I said, someone informed me that it's a very personal visit due to family pressure. I mean, it could be that. So I don't think we need to waste time on the motives, but I think we need to really focus on what is the message that will go down. What are the long-term political implications if people belonging to certain social positions, belonging to certain communities start falling in line? Because there is this overall regime's conditionality that pushing everyone, shoving down their throats and making people do things. In that kind of a thing, if people like Mr. Gavai are unable to resist, if people like Justice Chandrachud, if they don't resist, then what is left for common people like us to speak truth to the power? I know, as your program says, speaking truth to the power is now left to, it looks like only to Neelu Vyas, but there are not too many voices which are, because this speaking to truth to power now seems to come with a lot of risk. That's the optics that the regime wants to communicate. So it's unfortunate that people holding such high positions, who have had such glorious public life, glorious family traditions, are simply falling in line, perhaps also not understanding that there are long-term consequences of what they're doing, that it also questions autonomy of institutions, the ability to speak back to the executive, that it cannot breathe down people's life. There are limits within democracy. There are constitutional limits that are set. So it's unfortunate why so many of them are simply unable to, speak back or even just maintain their own neutrality. If they don't want to be anti-regime, they can simply maintain a dignified neutrality. Even that is being either made impossible by the regime, or people are very willingly falling in line because they don't see much options outside of the current dispensation.
No, but if you look at the larger social connotation of this picture, now Justice B.R. Gavai has been a Dalit Chief Justice, a former Chief Justice. He goes to someone who is supposed to be a Brahmin of sorts, and Baba Bageshwar. Now, as far as this social the fabric is concerned, what does this picture actually go to show? And with so much of social engineering happening, with so much of reach out to the Dalits, the OBCs, this picture also says a lot about that.
Yes, I think it says two very important things about our political and democratic dynamics. One, that moving up into higher places from people from backward caste and Dalit communities is not necessarily a case where they will speak truth to the power. It is not necessary that they will stand out to represent the interest of their community. So I think this even Dr. Ambedkar noted in his own time that he was very unhappy with a lot of Dalits. He said that you are here only to grab things and get jobs and things of that kind. So that's one overwhelming fact that is becoming very clear, is that those who are moving up, this whole question of representation. Why do we have the idea of representation? That people belonging to certain communities, if they move up to higher places, they will represent the interests of their communities. That's the buffer, the check. But that's not happening, because there is also a class character to these people. Once they move up, it's not just their caste, but they're also occupying certain class positions. And this is happening across board, Neelu, whether it's judiciary, whether it's academics, whether it's journalists. People coming from Dalit and OBC backgrounds who are moving up the ladder are not particularly the best of representatives against, hardcore, this kind of Hindutva, juggernaut. Second, I think it also represents the obverse of it, that these communities still do not have enough social and cultural power to really resist. So are we overestimating expecting Mr. Gavai coming from a Dalit community. You remember the incident that in spite of he being a CJI, it did not matter for someone just to throw chappal at him. So, I mean, these are the incidents. This is the ugly reality of our society. So these communities, the other side of the stories, are extremely vulnerable. They don't have the required social power. They don't have required cultural power and cultural capital to really resist. So is it that we are overestimating, thinking that these people should naturally come up and resist? What is the backup they have? If the system really breathes down their neck, what really checks do they have? What is the support system they have? I think that's also a very big question. So that's what makes, I think, our task of protecting democracy and rule of law so much more difficult in India. That people are unable to speak up for their own interests. They simply lack the social power to represent themselves. Therefore, protest in this country has become a site of privilege. And that is a very complex dynamic that Indian democracy is undergoing. That therefore, somebody like Rahul Gandhi can stand up and protest. And while we admire his protest, you can also see that comes with a certain kind of a privilege. And that privilege might, distance him from people. How do we then politicize this issue of the privilege in a positive direction, where people then feel that somebody like Rahul Gandhi may not belong to your community and caste, but might still be your representative? I think, therefore, it also shows that we'll have to make those bridges. Just simply talking about community and identity is highly insufficient in protecting a democracy. Today, if Dalits were to make a choice, rhetorically speaking, performatively speaking, between Rahul Gandhi and Mr. Gavai, Dalit should not hesitate saying that Rahul is a better representative of our community, even if he doesn't belong to our community. There are so many voices which are vociferously speaking. Therefore, you see, those limited voices that we have from these communities who stand up, like Anand Teltunde, a Dalit, was booked under Bhime Koregaon. So the regime is very clear that those who represent their community, not just as for belonging to a community, but also their interests, they will be booked. Others fall in line.
But Ajay, how do you think that the Dalit community might react after seeing this picture of Justice B.R. Gavai with Baba Bageshwar?
Yes, Nilu, after our yesterday's conversation, I went back to speak to many of my Dalit colleagues and, Dalit students, and the overwhelming response is one of great disappointment, but also of great helplessness. They said that, sir, he could have been threatened. It's very easy to threaten a Dalit and get away. He could have been forced. He could have been intimidated. These are the voices that came from the community. And also that there is a sense of helplessness and hopelessness. But there's also a sense of opportunism, which one should not completely deny that. Because if you remember Mr. Kasi Ram's statement, opportunism is our ideology. People who don't have, one has to realize this, Nilu, that if they don't do this, this has become almost like a survival strategy for them. Therefore, Dalits and OBCs think today that it is not fighting against the power. Whichever power is in place, you have to become part of that power. So whether it is BJP, whether it is RSS, whether it is Congress or the left.
But if you look at the thing from that prism, but what you've just described, and if you look at the things from that prism, then what's wrong in going to Baba Bageshwar, kneeling before him, doing the darshan, also clicking a picture? So there's nothing wrong with it.
Absolutely. That's the point you arrive at when you look at it through the dynamics of the pragmatics. That when you know that you don't have enough power to resist, why not be part of that power? So today, Dalit Bahujan overwhelming those social English-speaking elites think that whoever is in power doesn't matter for us because nobody is going to do much for us. So we join whoever is in power. That's the overwhelming pragmatics that has taken over the Dalit Bahujan politics. That's one reason why left of center forces, progressive, transformative, social democratist parties like Congress are finding it so difficult to attract the social base, because overwhelmingly...
Ajay, but a section of the Dalits, I'm sure, would also feel that, he shouldn't have gone and knelt before Baba Bageshwar. What was the need? And here we are asserting our identity, and here you have a former Chief Justice who's going and kneeling down before Baba Bageshwar.
Undoubtedly, you'll have a good enough chunk who would also say what you said. But then you have the example of Ms. Mayawati. Where is Mayawati for last 10 years? And ideally, Nilu, for this kind of a regime, the nature of politics we're witnessing, Mayawati should have been at the forefront. Look at Mr. Owaisi, the kind of politics that he is doing. And Owaisi and Mayawati should have been ideally our representative forces, because these are the two communities which are being unabatedly targeted by the current regime. But both, have chosen certain path which opens up certain kind of spaces for their own well-being, or whatever one might want to refer to it. And who is one fighting? It is those who are outside. It is the Congress under Rahul Gandhi. It is the left which doesn't. So that's the dynamics of Indian democracy, which makes it fascinating and extremely complex. So as you rightly pointed out just now, from a pragmatic dynamics, many Dalits might think this is a good choice, better to go with the regime than to face the consequences, because we don't have much social power to face this kind of a power. It is also a case of social mobility. After all, anti-caste movements are for social mobility. So if this method is giving you social mobility, if it is giving you a higher place, if it is giving you some other position, what is wrong if we go and take it? Why should all big posts belong only to caste Hindus? This is another argument they might make. So under conditions of democracy, we will have to ask these questions. How do you upturn this kind of a logic? How do you upturn a logic? Because somebody like Rahul Gandhi, who might be staking even, his personal interest in pitching this kind of struggle against Hindutva, but then for people from outside might look that, we don't have that kind of a social capital to resist. So there is a huge gap between those who are resisting, those who are. So today, as I said, protest and resistance have become a sites of privilege in India. And therefore, other groups prefer to negotiate, accommodate, get included at whatever cost through quid pro quo relation. That's what you're watching with North India with smaller caste groups. All of them get included into the Hindutva fold without much difficulty. There is not much resistance. There is a huge process of Hinduization of these castes. So that entire social justice language that we thought that Dr. Ambedkar and his constitution introduced would be a natural resistance to a monolithic theocratic Brahmanical state is a myth. That's what today we are discovering, that in spite of Ambedkar, you do not have that wherewithal today, because the power is so skewed. The 10% in India holds so much of social power compared to 90% that there's absolutely no match. So the question that the progressive, transformative, secular, centrist forces like Congress should then discuss is, how do we bridge this gap? I think it's therefore not sufficient to simply condemn somebody like Gavai. Even if we are critical, we are disappointed with him, there is this social context which we should not miss in our analysis, that there is this huge challenge that is staring at us. If we have to protect democracy and constitution of India, we'll have to bridge this gap. I think everybody from left to Congress will have to pitch and bridge this gap, not just criticize and say Gavai is compromised. I mean, that's only a beginning. That's a very surface level problem. Gavai someone else tomorrow, but that's Prakash Ambedkar people are disappointed with today, right? Even Ambedkar's own grandson. So that, I think those names can be speculative, we can discuss, but I think we should not stop at that level.
I also want to shift focus now to this Lenskart controversy. Now, Baba Bageshwar saying that there'll be protests outside Lenskart showrooms if their employees continue to wear Mangal Sutra and Tilak. And this apparently controversy started once the dress code of Lenskart came out in the public domain, and that's when Baba Bageshwar felt infuriated. What do you feel about this particular controversy?
One, I was surprised that an organization like a Lenskart should bring such ridiculous rules. I mean, how can you tell your your employees what to wear and what not to wear? If somebody, as you were pointing out, is recently married, you can't expect her to stop wearing her Mangal Sutra to come and work at Lenskart. I mean, the policy itself looks skewed. I don't know in what context they took this decision. Especially those rules also apparently say that you can wear pagdi and burqa under certain conditions allowed, but not Mangal Sutra. I mean, this looks infurious. This looks very strange. Why somebody would make this kind of a rule, under this dispensation.
Ajay, there are two things. One is, of course, the flawed dress code of Lenskart, that why should Lenskart come out with a policy like this? But the other is the extreme response of Baba Bageshwar. He telling the Lenskart that you please go and open shop in Lahore. Now, to go to that extent, now what is going to be the impact on the other corporates? This time it is Lenskart. Then on other occasions, there could be bigger corporates who can come under his fire. So what happens to that? And how does one bring this kind of an atmosphere under control? Can the corporates do business easily if Baba Bageshwar-like figures continue to spew venom like this?
No, absolutely. I think that you are absolutely spot on there in saying that the controversy exists. It is a skewed policy, and we can always put pressure on to legitimate legal and social means, pressure on the company to change. And that's what I think the Lenskart said, that they are revising their policy. And that's where the issue ends. But I think the problem with the Hindutva brigade is they don't allow things to die out. And you cannot have private individuals, whether it's a Baba or whoever it might be, taking law into his own hands. Now you have this Hindutva, some forces in Lucknow going around putting tilak and tying some thread around people, forcing them. So as prohibiting certain dress code is a problem, imposition is also a problem. You cannot keep prohibition as an excuse and therefore go berserk and say that now it's compulsory for everyone to put tilak. If you're a Hindu, you should now start putting tilak. If you're a Hindu woman, you should start using a bindi. And you should not jump from this to this end. I think Hindutva brigade problem is that they want to operate in these extremities, that they want to push the discourse to the extreme end. Even following this statement that, if Mangal Sutra is stopped today, tomorrow Gita and Ramayana will be stopped. I mean, this kind of hysteria and insecurity in a land where you have over 80% Hindus is a very strange thing. Why should we get so panic stricken? Why should we get so hysterical if somebody does something? And there is no end to this. Tomorrow, somebody from Lenskart, some odd employee might stand at some nukkad and start, giving some abuses at Sanatan. So should we get worked up? Should we completely break down? Should we think that, this is the end of Hinduism? This is the end of Hindu? Why should we reach such extreme conclusions? There will always be people who are mischievous. There will always be people who are misguided, misinformed, ill-informed. You have so much diversity in society. So there is a sense of proportion should be maintained. I mean, and that's precisely the reason why you need institutions, why you need rule of law, why you need judiciary, and these institutions need to maintain their autonomy. That's precisely the reason you need autonomy, so that they can do their work without interference. What Hindutva does is both. It destroys these institutions and mobilizes extremity on the streets. So it's just at two extremes that it keeps working. And these are two interlinked logics that you undermine the legitimacy of. That's why I was pointing to you, Neelu, of these two things coming together, Lenskart and Gavai coming together. It shows undermining of institutions through Gavai's visiting of Baba Bageshwar, and extreme polarity and street mobilization in the language of Baba Bageshwar. I think these are very interconnected institutions. This is how Hindutva works, that it undermines the legitimacy of institutions. It tells you the information. The only way you can work is through street mobilization. Both are extremely dangerous for democracy. And I should add, this is extremely dangerous not only for minorities, it is dangerous even for the majority community, because everybody can start settling their scores on the streets now. Somebody is unhappy with you, I'm unhappy with you today, tomorrow I'll start, hurling abuse that I want to settle the scores with you here and now. And I was narrating you this story, some friend told me about some colony in Delhi that where a Hindu had a fight with his Sikh neighbor, and immediately he turned around and said, "Oh, Khalistani, you come down, I'll settle scores with you." This is where we will land up. Every personal score, every small tiff, every parking conflict, everything will get into this bigotry kind of a language of hurling abuses at each other's religions, hating each other. So that's absolutely unnecessary. Why do we have to be so insecure? So my appeal, I think, through your channel to the Hindus would be this, that while we condemn Lenskart kind of a thing, Baba Bageshwar is not the solution. That kind of language of Baba Bageshwar is actually anti-Hindu. No, Hinduism never condones this kind of a language. Two, it is not good for our own interest, our Hindu interest, Hindu majority interest, to have a society which suffers from righteous lawlessness. Because once there is lawlessness, nobody is safe. It's not just religious minorities. It's not just somebody sending Lahore. India will become Lahore.
Right. So my last question to you is that if you weave both the stories together of how CJI, former CJI BR Gavai has met Bageshwar, and then Bageshwar unleashes his own style of just running the riot with his Hindutva politics and provoking people, protesting, and just dismantling the social fabric. So if you weave the two stories together, what is the biggest takeaway from both these stories?
So I do feel they're interconnected stories. That the Gavai incident coming close on heels to Baba Bageshwar's statements and outbursts, and Gavai going and meeting the same Baba Bageshwar, I think is a perfect Hindutva narrative. That institutions will fall in line. Second, Dalits and social justice language has no space outside Hindutva fold. Third, anybody questioning, including big corporates, questioning any Hindu symbolism or ritualism will have street thugs taking you.
The institutions like the office of the Chief Justice, they come in line. Then there is a message sent out to the corporates that it is Baba Bageshwar who is running the government in the real sense right now, setting the narrative also.
So you see three things: institutions, social justice narratives, corporates. All three are taken under, and it is shown. The purpose of this narrative is to show how Hindutva is an overwhelming power. Nobody can face it. That everybody who you think can fall outside will be made to fall in line. So that's the, I think, optics that is clearly emerging from this narrative. And I will not be surprised if this is a manufactured, both they are manufactured incidents in such close. I mean, one can speculate, even assuming it's a coincidence, it's a deadly coincidence.
Absolutely. We leave it to the viewers. It was a very interesting conversation, and I would request all the viewers of HW News to listen to this entire interview, which has been so riveting about this Baba Bageshwar episode and how coincidentally it's coming close on the heels. First comes the picture of Justice B.R. Gavai, then this Lenskart controversy, one after the other. What could be the bigger reason? Was it a manufactured narrative? Just think about it. Thank you so much, Professor Ajay Gudavarthy. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, Neelu.